Greetings, pilgrims, and welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage. And today we are continuing with our Battle Royale series. You guys have been just eating this up, so thank you so much for all your kind attention on this. I've been making some changes here, and we've got a lot of cool stuff to cover today. It is jam-packed, so let's get right into it. So here's where we are as of right now. And as you can see, I've added a few more things. We have the compass going all the way across the screen, and I am currently in the production of making that compass, the numbers a bit smaller and stretching them out a bit more. I do think it's pretty cool. What I've been doing is, while we're building these, I'm looking up what are the things that people wish current Battle Royale games would do, and I'm trying to add in all of those things. So in the bottom, you can see there we have our health bar. We're working on that for a future episode. I did make some changes to the mini-map in the bottom right. You can see that now when I rotate, it's rotating my player icon, but it's not rotating the mini-map. So now if I'm facing directly north, you can see that my character is facing north. And if I look west, for example, he's looking off to the left there. So that's perfect. And then at the very top corner there, we've got the number 99 remaining. So we're going to work on counting down, and we're going to make some dummy characters and say, okay, now if those get destroyed, then we'll reduce that number there. And I made some improvements to the wall here. We'll talk about this later when we talk about the substance file for this. But as you can see, there's a little bit of a height map to it, and they glow. And we fixed that problem where you could see through it. You could see that seam in the wall, so that's looking really good. But none of that is for today. Today we're talking about the plane mechanics and having the plane go overhead and having the plane drop the players off. So for today, we're just doing the first part where we have to establish everything, and then we'll generate the plane, and I'll show you a little bit of code, and we'll talk about this in two parts because there's so much to it. But for now, let's go ahead and stop this, and I'll show you what we have. So you'll notice that over here on the left, we have some objects here that are combining our world objects down and kind of organizing everything. So I have the player off by themselves. We have a UI component, and this has all of our canvas stuff is going to be underneath of this. Then we have a world component, and this is essentially just the island, the light, and our water. And then we have here this BRS mechanics. Now, ultimately, this will become an asset for the asset store, where you'll be able to just buy the entire thing with all the pro features. What we're showing you here are all kind of the light features. This is the core mechanics, and then we'll do all the fancy stuff later and wrap it up into an asset for you guys. So under our BRS mechanics, we have two mechanics so far. We have our safe zone here. And this is the safe zone, is this circle. So we have the zone wall there and the current circle, which is drawing the circle for the minimap. We've gone over that. And today what we're including is this BRS plane drop core. And this is ultimately going to be a prefab. You can just drag and drop into your world, put it at the origin, and then just fill out the information here, and it all works for you, okay? So we're working on this, and it's going to come with all of these objects in there, and we'll talk about the plane as well. And so let me show you what it does, and then we're going to talk about how it's built, all right? So right now this is disabled, so if I just enable that and hit play, watch what happens. So instantly we're in the sky. We have our plane that's flying across the island. So we've chosen a path across the island to make sure that we're going to go somewhere across it. And then it will put us up here, and we have this orbiting through the orbit script here to make sure that the camera can orbit around. Now, the part that we don't have done yet, this will be for next time, is this orbit script we're going to talk about next time. I'll provide it this time, but it will be in-depth covered next time. And the ability to say click or press a button to drop the player out of the plane. And we want to make sure that we have some restrictions. So you can't drop, like, say, now. You'd have to be able to drop a little closer to the island, and then a point at which you have to have dropped by, or it will kick you out, just like it does in PUBG, and I imagine the same thing in Fortnite. Haven't gotten into that too much just yet, but these are the mechanics that we're working towards. And yes, we have to work on our plane a bit, because right now it doesn't make any noise, and the propellers are not spinning, but I can show you where I got this great model. Credit to the artist there, so I will show that to you, show you the page, and the link will be in the description. You can go and download the model. I will not include this in the download package on my website because this is not my model to give away. And so you need to follow his instructions about how to give him credit, which I will do as well. But I will link you to it so you can go and get it yourself. All right, so this is what we're building. So let's jump in to take a look at how this works. All right, so our first main object here, just create an empty object. So create empty. And I called it BRS for Battle Royale series or Battle Royale system. Plane drop core. So this is the core mechanical piece that we're going to be using here. And you must center it to the world. So just up here, right click and say reset. And that will reset all of its transforms. So we'll do position, rotation, and set the scales to 1. And then we're going to attach this script, which is the BRS Plane Drop Manager. And we're going to look at that in just a moment. And then there are 2 sub-objects here, a start and stop. Now these objects are just cubes. Just literally right-click, create 3D object cube, okay? Call one start, call one stop, just so you know which is which. And put them underneath of this. If you just drag and drop an object, you can make it a parent. So here if I make this, unparent this. Now if I drag and drop, now the object I dropped onto is the parent. So I'll just put these underneath of that guy. See, now they're parented. Now these guys are parented underneath him like they should be. Now the manager here is going to ask you for several things. It'll ask you for your map size. And this is in kilometers. So typically most of the Battle Royale maps are 8 kilometers by 8. So we do 8 by 8. So I just put the number 8 here. The drop zone range is how much of this island do you want to be an acceptable drop range. For example, I have it set to 8, so it goes all the way to the edge. So it will say anywhere in here, so long as we cross this path. Because ultimately what this is going to do is also parent itself to the world and give it a random rotation, so it will come from a random side of the island every time as well. If you lower this down to say something like 6, 5, or 2, or 1, the acceptable range will become tighter and tighter towards the center. So maybe you want a path that always goes over the center, then you could achieve that in the end by dragging this all the way down. Right now, it works only if you set it up here, but I'm going to show you the code. I'll provide it to you. You can pick it apart if you like. I'll show you how it works, and we're working on making the final version. You'll be able to slide this and make a determination. Okay. Now, under the plane settings here, you need to provide a prefab that is the plane. We'll talk about that in just a little bit, but the plane and the texture to it, and then there's a script to just make it kind of go forward for now. That script will increase over time as well because we're also going to include the mechanics for dropping from the plane. You need to give it an altitude. How high off the water plane do you want it to fly at? Now this has to be higher than your tallest mountain peak. So for me, I put that at 2,000. That's a fair distance. The plane airspeed, this is how fast the plane is flying forward. This gets passed to your plane object, and that will just kind of carry that forward. So it's just a nice place to put that here. We're working on turning these private, so you won't even have to see these. But for now, these are hooked up. These are the start and stop objects. And then this verified path will go away as well. This is just a debugging statement here. You can remove it from your script. I'll show you where. And this is just to make sure that we have a verified path. Now, what is a verified path? Let's talk about that. So the way that this script works is essentially it's generating 2 arrays of points. And let's take a look at the script, and I'll walk through it, and I'll show you back and forth. So this is the script. This is the drop manager. This is what's on this object here. And you'll be able to download this and just attach it. I'll show you how to do all of that, okay? So essentially what we're doing here is when it begins, we're making 2 sets of points, 2 sets of 9 points to be precise. There's a center point here and a center point here. And then there are 4 points along here and then 4 more points this way. And the same thing over here and the same thing over here. So imagine this side is A and this side is B. Then you have 1 through 9 and 1 through 9. So now what we do is once we have that all set up, and this is the code that does that, just generating those points based upon math and some other stuff, okay? Then here we're going to create a cylinder. We're going to create a cylinder centered to the world, and it will be sized appropriately based upon the numbers that you gave it up here. And we're going to call it the acceptable drop zone. And essentially what this is doing is it's generating a cylinder. So if I go here and say cylinder, this is what it's doing in code, so you don't have to actually see it. Right-click, reset, and it's making a cylinder that is massive. Something like this. Okay? So right now mine is set to 8, so this is what it's doing. It's making a cylinder that is essentially the size of the whole island. And then what we're doing is we're saying, okay, now that we have that cylinder, let's go ahead and set up our flight path. So in here, in our flight path, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to set some variables here. You don't have to worry about that right now. But what we're doing is we're going to pick a random start point and pick a random end point. So remember we talked about our 9 points on either side of these. Let me give this this object here the zone material just so that we can see it easier. So cylinder, and I'll give it the wall material. There you go. So we can see that it's there, but we can see the island too. So we have our a list of A points, 1 through 9, and B, 1 through 9. We're going to pick a random one of these, so say here, and then a random one of these, say here. And we're going to draw a line from one to the other, okay? So here we're picking a random A point. Here we're picking a random B point. And then here I'm setting up an object. So our start object, this guy, we're going to put him over here where the start thing is. And we're going to put stop over here where the stop is. And we're going to make start look at stop. So it's going to actually point in that direction. So if you were to shoot a beam or say, I don't know, fly a plane along that path, it would go from one to the other. All right. So then here is the actual ray cast. So we're going to say shoot a ray starting at start, forward out of start. How far? 8,000 meters. So the size of the map. So that way at any point it can reach all the way across. Then in here is some debugging stuff to say that we're actually going to try this a couple of times. So if it doesn't hit that point, if these 2 points are not acceptable and they don't actually go through an object called acceptable drop zone, then we know that we've missed. And by missed, I mean if we have these points and say we shoot from here to here, so it goes a straight line, well, that plane's not going to fly over the island, so we don't want it. So that's when we say, nope, that's no good. Pick another random 2 points, shoot another line. So the line must go through this cylindrical object in order for it to be an acceptable drop zone, which means it's going to go over the island. Okay? So once that's true, then we're going to change this verified path variable. And once the verified path becomes true, down here we're going to call this other function called spawn plane. It means, okay, we have a path that we know is going to go over the island. We're good to go. Let's get a plane in here. So at the start point, we're going to look at the end point. Then I'm going to instantiate our plane. So this means instantiate is like saying you have an object and all of its properties and all the ways about it kind of stored in memory. And you just go and rubber stamp them down like a cookie cutter. Bam, bam, bam. And every time you click the button, it's going to spawn another one of these that's exactly like how you got it set up. So we're going to do that for our plane at the plane start position and at its rotation, because its rotation is now looking at the endpoint, which is on the other side of the island. And then we're going to say, you know what, we're done. So we now no longer have a verified path. So if we no longer have a verified path, we don't do this. And we actually can't do this again because right here, we destroy our cylinder because we've already used it once. Okay, so I know that's complicated. It's a lot of stuff. But if you download this script, all you have to do is create an object and call it this. You don't even have to call it that, but let's call it this. Put it at the origin of the world. Attach the script. Just drag and drop the script onto it, and this will appear. And then you have to feed it this value here, which is what we're going to do in just a moment. You have to feed it a height, and then how fast you want the plane to go. And the rest will be fine. You got to make these two objects, the start and stop. And remember, these are the two cubes. You just make a cube and parent it under here, and then drag and drop them over here, start and stop. And that's it. And it will work, okay? So let's take the cylinder and let's destroy it. Let's do it one more time to take a look. We're flying through the air. Here we go. See? I am going across that line. So I am going to go through the side of that cylinder. So by making that cylinder smaller, we actually make the path that the plane is going to fly closer and closer to the center. Okay? So that's how that's working. So now let's take a look at creating our plane. All right? So I'm going to close this a little bit. And let's zoom back down onto the ground. Here we are with our player. This thing above is for the UI, so you can see it on the map. You can't actually see it in game. Pretty cool. Okay, so we need a plane. So I found this great model. Let me bring over this window here and show you on Sketchfab. I love Sketchfab. So the artist here is Helijah. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. I hope so. Very awesome set of models. Very accurate plane models. Awesome work, sir. Very good job. And he has very graciously provided this Lockheed AC-130 Hercules. This is the type of plane that is used in PUBG. And there is a download option here. So you can download the model here. So you have to log in and you can download the model, and there you go. So you download it, and then once that's done, and the link for this will be in the description, and I will definitely be giving the artist credit where credit is due. So I have that here. So if I go into Shrinking Circle, and let's go into my meshes right here. Here is the AC-130. There it is. Very cool. Okay. And then we need to provide it a texture. And what I did was I just went in, a material, but I just went into the textures, C-130, and I think it generated one. Yeah. So there you go. So just kind of drag that onto there. It's not perfect, just for kind of getting things going right now. Later we'll replace it with some kind of an object a plane, a boat, whatever. There's been a bus for Fortnite. There's a plane for PUBG. Maybe we'll have a flying yacht with, rocket boosters or something. So we'll have some kind of an object like this that will represent our carrying device. And then, of course, you could take this apart and say, animate these guys to spin, attach a sound to it, whatever you need. So we have that. And let's take a look at our prefab and we'll follow along with it. Okay, so I'm going to bring the prefab into the world as well. He's way over there, but that's okay. So under the plane, I have a couple of things. I have an object called plane. So if I zoom in here, there we go. All right. So my object is called BRS_plane. This is just a blank object. Again, create an empty object. So BRS_plane. And this is where you're going to put on the plane script. All right. Parented underneath that is the actual plane itself, the aeroplane. Okay. So here's the actual mesh. So all you have to do is drag your plane into the world and then parent it underneath this and then apply the material. So that's all this object is the visuals, if you will, of it. So this is where you would put the propellers, the sound, all that kind of stuff. Then I have parented again to this object. I have another blank object, an empty object called camera pivot. And you'll see it's completely zeroed out. All it does is sit here. And this is going to be where the camera is going to pivot around. This is the center point. So it's always going to rotate to look at this point. All right. And then underneath that, we're going to put a camera. So this is just a camera object. And for me, for this size and purposes, and I have not scaled the ship at all, the AC-130 here. So I put it at 0, 0, and then -50 on the Z, which means it puts it kind of behind the plane back here like this. You see that there. And then I'm going to put the camera orbit script onto this. And I'll provide the script for you. I'm not going to go over it in this episode. We'll go over it next episode where we talk about the rest of the plane mechanics. But to get everything working here today, you'll need that script as well. So on this camera, put this camera orbit script. And these are my numbers for the sensitivities. Not all of these are working yet. This is from another tutorial, which I will find and share in the next one. The mouse sensitivity of 6. Scroll sensitivity is 2. Orbit dampening is 6. And scroll dampening is 6. So we put that script on this camera, which is parented underneath of this object, which is parented underneath of the plane, the BRS_plane object. And the plane manager script is on here. Okay. So let's look at those scripts really fast. Plane manager is very simple. You could write this yourself, but I will provide it. All this does is say we have a float called airspeed, which again, our other script will eventually reach in and set this value. But for now, I have it set to the same value, 100. And in update, we're just going to move forward to transform.position plus equals transform.forward times time.delta time times airspeed. So this means take my position, add to it moving forward every frame at this constant speed. Okay? So all that does is make sure the plane goes forward. So that's why it's on the overall object, so everything moves together. And then the actual plane, the aeroplane plane here, is just the visuals and the camera pivot and the camera. Those are all other objects to make the camera motion work, but we want all of them to be under this BRS plane. So that's why this is the thing that moves forward. Make sense? Kind of like having a wagon and you put stuff in the wagon. If you push the wagon, everything in the wagon is going to go with it. So that's what we're doing here. And the other script here for the actual plane orbit, this is a little bit more complicated, so we'll go over this next time. But essentially, it's allowing you to rotate around the plane. So that's all you need to know for now. Just attach this to the camera here, right there, and it'll work for you. Okay? Again, all of this will be in the download package. All right, so with that complete, with your plane complete, just create a prefabs folder. So to create a folder, anywhere in here, you just right-click and say Create Folder. Okay? I always create one called Prefabs. And if you drag anything from here into here, it'll become a prefab. You can see I have 3 prefabs here. A little bit of a spoiler alert, we're also making the airdrops. So don't worry, those are coming. So you drag it into here and it'll become a prefab. Excellent. So with that done, I'm going to delete this and let's go back to our plane drop core mechanics. I'll bring us back into the world for a second here. And we're done with the AC-130 here. We can delete them. Okay. So we're back on solid ground here and we have all of that stored. So if we go back to our BRS plane drop core, again, right here, this BRS plane spawn, that's where you want to take your prefab and put them in there. You can see if I bring the prefab into the world, that's what he looks like, and we can prove that, again, yep, he's got all of his stuff set up properly. Okay, so with all of that set, you'll notice that when you run the game, if you have the first-person controller set up as well, like we've had, you'll notice that it overrides that because this is a new camera that's being generated. So I can't actually do anything here. And my arrow keys, I'm not actually moving because the camera is taken over by this camera. So now we can look around the plane as we're flying over the mountaintops here. And like I said, next time we're going to work on the mechanics of disabling the player, and the player will actually be sort of inside the middle of this. It doesn't really have to be anywhere. But then when we click a button and we're in the acceptable range, then the player will be dropped out of the plane. And we're working on parachuting mechanics, the physics of falling and that kind of thing, and the ability to point more downward. You go faster, pull back up, you go slower, all that kind of stuff. It's a little bit of aerodynamics, and we're trying to simplify it as much as possible so that it looks and feels good for the game, but it's not overtly complicated for you guys. So then you can be building your Battle Royale stuff and all your cool ideas and everything. We can see the circle down there, the safe zone. You can see how small it looks from way up here. So yeah, we've got a plane mechanics that work, and it will auto retry until we hit that center cylinder. So changing the size of that cylinder is essentially the way to tell it how much of the island you want to be an acceptable drop range. If, for example, this level you had like a volcano in the middle and you wanted to have lava all over, you could say you have to drop somewhere towards the center for some reason. You make that cylinder smaller. But all of that will be in the package for you. So to review, we've got 3 scripts here for you. The actual plane drop manager, and this guy is going to go on this object here, on the BRS plane drop core. This is an empty object. You just name it that, drag and drop the script here, create 2 cubes, a start and stop, and parent them underneath of this. Drag those cubes into the start and stop positions here. All right, we'll put those there. Put your plane prefab in here. Set your height and set your speed. That's all you got to do. And the scripts will be provided. So you'll have this one, the plane manager script. Let's take a look at that again, just to reiterate here. So I bring this guy in here and let's open all this. The plane manager script goes on your container object. This is the empty you create, BRS plane. We put that right here, and you set your airspeed. And then your plane orbit script is going to go on this camera. Okay, so again, you need to create, this is the visuals for the actual aeroplane, the C-130. Your camera pivot is an empty object that is parented underneath of this one. And then the camera is parented underneath this one. Remember, you have the Z, the -50 offset here. And then you put the camera orbit script on this. And once again, my settings here are 6, 2, 6, and 6. And with all of that complete, then you can also disable this by just disabling the object so it won't actually do anything. So for example, if I wanted to suddenly say, oh, I really want to run around and look at my mini-map and check things out, well, then I can just disable this. And now if I hit play, it should drop me back on the ground, and here I am running around, testing some things out. And then I say, okay, now I've got that. Let me go back to dropping out of the plane, make sure that works. I just re-enable it here. And now when I hit play, it's going to do the whole cylinder thing, shoot a ray. Okay, there we go. That's an acceptable path, and we're flying through the air. And you can also, in your script, change it so that when the plane gets spawned, if you don't want the compass yet, I like the compass so I can kind of tell, okay, I want to go this way, maybe straight northeast, or maybe more like 30 degrees. You can try some things out. So guys, that's what we got for this week. I hope that you have enjoyed very much. If you have any comments, questions, thanks so much for all of your kind attention, all the questions, all the feedback. We love it. We're doing a lot with this stuff for you guys, so please stick with us, bear with us on some of the bigger stuff like this. It takes a lot of math and a lot of figuring things out for you guys, but I want to make sure we get it to you. And yes, I want to officially answer the question that there will be an asset in the asset store when this is all done. It will be a complete Battle Royale system. You just kind of drag and drop it into the world, and there you go. Caveat to that, you may have to supply your own guns and weapons and animations and such, but the core mechanics, all the things we're doing here will be provided for you. Full documentation, full code, everything. So we're working hard on that, guys, and I hope very much that you enjoy. So until next time, guys, keep practicing, get better, and we'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.